Hello and welcome everyone to our Gold Lactation Alumni presentations for 2017. I'm Fiona Langsharp, IBCLC Public Relations Manager and MC for our Gold Learning Online Education. Well, welcome to Barbara Wilson-Clay. She is going to be speaking about looking at the baby, infant assessment for breastfeeding. Welcome, Barbara. It's so great to have you again. How are you doing?
I'm delighted to be here again, Fiona. This is such a fun experience for me to participate in these gold lectures, and I'm just very happy to be back.
Well, I'm glad that you're back. And I too, I actually love the Gold Alumni because it really does take things to a whole new level. And of course, what better topic to have coming from you is the infant assessment. So first of all, before we get started, I got a couple of questions for you because I know I want everyone just to learn a little bit about what's going to be happening. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself once again, and then tell us a little bit about when you first discovered the importance of an accurate assessment on an infant.
Well, thanks. I'd be happy to. As far as what I do, I've been a private practice lactation consultant for 25 years. Before that, I worked with La Leche League doing mostly special circumstances kinds of calls. I worked in the professional liaison department where that um, was really what we were all about, helping mothers with unusual situations. So right from the very start, I've been interested in the question, why won't the baby breastfeed? And that question may not matter so much to the health worker who's helping the mother because the health worker basically does basic things to protect the
Sure.
breastfeeding experience. But it matters so much to the mother why the baby can't breastfeed. Because if she doesn't have a reasonable explanation for that, she internalizes it and blames herself. It's like failing the first great task of motherhood. And so it's really critically important to be able to help her see what's going on. And looking at the baby is a skill, and it's a skill that can be learned. And it's a skill that actually most of us possess, but sometimes we don't trust our impressions. So I've tried to become systematic in the way that I look at babies, and to view each one of them as an individual with strengths and weaknesses, and try to communicate those to the mother so that she has a reasonable expectation about what's going on and how long it's going to take to resolve. And I just feel that is really the primary skill that I have brought to my clients in a pretty busy private practice. I think in most years I was seeing, 500 to 700 women a year with
Wow.
interesting, concerning, difficult problems, most of them referred by physicians. And so I've had a lot of experience looking at babies, both normal babies and babies with challenges. So that's a big part of what my career has been all about.
Well, you just in talking there, Barbara, you had me sitting right there with one of my clients as I'm looking at her and, the words that she's using, and she's just trying to grapple with what's happening, and she really wants to understand. I think the mums today who I see anyways are very invested in finding, what is the problem, and then what is the solution. They are invested, they really want to know. So I can't think of, again, just that accuracy of assessments becomes so, um, it becomes such an integral part of what we're doing today. So let me ask you this question, because I thought, in thinking about what you do and how long you've been in practice and how many mothers you've seen, but I really was curious in researching this topic, were you surprised yourself how many details that could be looked at in an infant assessment?
No, I'm really not. And I guess that arises out of my many years of experience looking at at babies and small children and even at animals. I'm very interested in behavior, whether it's human or birds or other mammals. And there's so much that can be learned from watching creatures move, watching how they communicate, watching their body language, just everything is fascinating. Now, the thing that's changed in terms of assessment in the last, say, 10 or 15 years, in my opinion, is the fact that now we have these very sophisticated ultrasound methods that let us see for the first time inside the mouth and to see what these muscle groups are doing when they move. There's fascinating new research. Kay Hoover and I just updated the Breastfeeding Atlas, which is essentially an assessment textbook. And we really looked at some fascinating information that's happening at the DNA, RNA level, and that's happening with tissue examination. For instance, people are starting to actually biopsy the tissue of frenulums that are severed during frenotomies and looking at the differences in a tongue-tied baby's frenulum versus the frenulum of a baby who's not, and seeing, bundles of striated muscle tissue and things that are we just never had any conception of these before. It's all been theoretical. And now so much is being revealed because we can see it better and we can see it at a molecular and even a DNA kind of level. And I think that has been really surprising and gratifying to see that science advance. And it's also, of course, made me have to reconsider some of my most precious preconceptions, which have turned out over the years to be dead wrong about a lot of
Right.
things, in light of better evidence. So,
Sure.
I think that the mind of a scientist, has to be very balanced in terms of not being enthusiastic about things, uh, but being very calm and rational about looking at things, and remembering that those wide pendulum swings typically come back to someplace in the middle where there is really you know not such dramatic pronunciations about this is the way things are. We
Right.
don't know the way things really are with a lot of the stuff we're still
Sure.
doing. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's great to hear. And in asking that question about, were you surprised in the detail? I mean, this is what makes you the expert here, Barbara. And thank goodness, you are the one taking on this subject matter because for you, you probably knew that there was so many details, and that's why you kept pushing and pushing to, really find that accuracy. And that's what I love about you is that you just don't give up. And like you said, you've even changed your thinking, and you've been happy and surprised about what we can do today in our assessment as well, and taking it to a whole new level of biopsies and ultrasounds and all those types of things. So I know in putting these presentations together, you garnish a lot of detail, and I certainly appreciate you teaching us. So lastly, as we look at what we will be learning, what are you hoping that our delegates will take away from this presentation? And don't give away too much, Barbara, but let us know, what are you excited about sharing?
well, I think what I'd really love everybody to realize is that they're capable of making these assessments. I think people sometimes think that folks who have been in the business for a really long time just somehow or another have a magical level of skill that's just unapproachable, and really it's just a question of using your eyes, using your wits, calming down, being careful, focusing, and really acknowledging that every single mother and baby that you see are individuals. And an individual assessment is exactly what you would demand of yourself if you went to the doctor. You don't want the doctor to look in a book and say, well, typically people with your condition, you want the doctor to say, okay, typically people with your condition, but in your case, I see these additional things happening and we have to adjust and compensate for these things. You want that level of care, you want it personalized. And we can't have a cookbook kind of approach to taking care of mothers and babies. We have to have a flexible kind of point of view where we acknowledge that individual uh, assessment need and provide it. And I think that that's what I'd like people to just be open to, that they can learn this. We're going to do some step-by-step assessments here in this talk that will help you see what you should be doing, and it's fun. it's challenging. It's like a detective game in a lot of ways. And
Right.
science should be exciting, and it should be stimulating, and it should be fun, and should be approached from the standpoint of mutual problem solving, because the mothers bring so much to this discussion. If you can be open to their individuality, they know a lot about what's happening, and we can acknowledge that, and encourage that communication and dialogue, and it works for the baby's interest.
Well, you've captured my attention. There's no, no doubt about it. I'm certainly looking forward to learning more and being open, like you said. And I think that's what, that's what it seems to be now. We just need to be constantly open and remind ourselves to be open. I think we can get into a bit of a grind in, assessing babies and sometimes, jumping the gun. I even find myself doing that, making those assessments. Without really thinking through and taking that individual diet into consideration. So I'm looking forward to this great refresher and learning some new things from you. And I'll look forward to hearing some feedback from our delegates too. We're going to have a great time here. So thank you so much, Barbara Wilson Clay, for sitting down and chatting with me. Always a pleasure to hear about what you're doing and what's coming up here, of course, at our Gold Alumni presentations for 2017. Thanks again, Barbara, and thanks to our delegates for listening in. Bye-bye for now.